What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Security Squawk Podcast, where we bring you all the goods around the business of cybersecurity. I got my three co-hosts with me today: Randy Bryan, Reginald Andre, Ryan O'Hara. What's up, guys? How are you?
What's going on?
Doing well.
Not
Getting
much.
ready for, I was going to say, getting ready for Thanksgiving next week.
Oh my God!
Yeah, and focusing on bringing our audience something new.
Something new.
Like the song says.
Yep. So if we bring them something new, Randy, what do we charge for that?
Oh, great. Yeah. So our fee for the show, Andre coined, is free 99. That's free as in free beer, not as in free something that's not worth something. And we just ask that you like, subscribe, share, and comment on our show. And that is the best way that you can help us pay for the show. So, yeah. And also Thanksgiving is next week. So what do we say about that, Ryan or Andre?
Don't be a turkey. Protect your business from ransomware.
Yes. So how's the weather down there in Florida and up there in Detroit, y'all? Oh, here he goes.
84
It's cold. I just got back from Orlando, so went through the hurricane and then was golfing by Friday, and then flew back here to like 30s. So fun stuff.
Yeah, we were in the 30s last night here in Texas.
No way.
Awesome. Yeah.
Oh my God! You guys are going to
Cold
get it
week,
again.
man. People are dying
Wow.
down here, just like people die up there when it's over 80. So
I was recently with some people who were talking about your freeze last year and how horrible it was. They were like, it's worse than a hurricane. I just looked at them. I was just like, really?
yeah, it's not worse than a hurricane. We call it snowpocalypse. Literally every single county in Texas had a freeze warning. And that's never happened before. And there were counties that haven't had freeze warnings in, like 50 years and stuff like that. So even down in the valley, it was frozen. It was crazy.
I mean, when anybody loses electricity in today's day and age, it's going to impact, lives, business, personal. It's just inevitable. You need electricity these days for pretty much everything. So, all right, guys. Thank you, Randy, for letting everybody know what the fee is. And don't forget to share our show with your friends and family. We are live today, so we might be able to bring in some questions. If you have any questions, you can drop them in the comments of wherever you're watching us from, and we will try to answer them as quickly as we can. And today's show, we got no shortage of ransomware events to talk about. A big one, actually. We don't really talk about international ransomware events because we usually have so many here in the United States, but we're going to cover this one out in Australia simply because of the breadth and depth of the attack and kind of bring everybody up to speed on what happened over there, and highlight that things like this can happen here in the United States, and quite in fact they are happening. A lot of times they don't make it into the news to where we know about it, even with hospitals. And then we have a couple counties, municipal governments that are under a ransomware attack, along with a Canadian food retailer. And then we're going to talk about some other things, how, these cyber criminals are doing things to trick you into doing various things, like giving your password up to them and how simple it is and the different techniques that they're using today to trick you into giving you your email, username, password, or banking information or social media logins or what have you. So that's kind of what's on tap for today. So without further ado, guys, let's jump into what's going on over in Australia. So from what I understand, we have this basically MetaBank, which is a medical entity in Australia, and they've been hacked. And it's not about the number of records, which is in the millions, that have been exposed. It's what's within that data set that's been exposed. And I don't care who picks up or who wants to chime in here, but let's kind of educate people on A, what happened, and B, what am I talking about? What data is actually out there that, Australians and potentially people who have traveled to Australia.
All those Russians. It's not just a song lyric. It is the kind of exasperating.
I thought we had a guest on.
I was like, whoa, where's that?
I was like, uh-oh.
All the Russians. So be careful opening up that link. That's all I got to say. Open it in.
He answered my question.
I mean, the thing that jumps out at me with this is oftentimes when we see this kind of stuff, it's like, oh, well, they got access to this, but they didn't get access to this. Like the amount of stuff that they're talking about here was like they had access to everything. I mean, so some of the stuff that this is talking about is people being, fearful, individuals who are impacted by this, being fearful of blackmail for, things like their HIV status, whether or not, they had an abortion, all sorts of different things that can be used. So like, whoever got in had free reign of everything, it looks like, just based on this information.
Yeah, typically when we're talking about these type of articles, it's names, social security numbers, just the regular. But like as Ryan is saying, you're talking about drug and alcohol use if they had an abortion.
All those Russians.
All right, Randy.
It's a song lyric. It is the kind of.
That's not me. Which one of you guys opened up that link? I already muted mine. But anyway, go ahead, Andre. I was going to add to that once you're finished.
Yeah, so non-viable pregnancy, miscarriages, complications, infections. I mean, the list goes on of, essentially an Excel spreadsheet that's listing all of this information in the dark web. So this is a really, really bad thing that's happening now.
Yeah, I mean, this is literally like as bad as it gets for consumers. All that information, like you said, a person in there mentioned that they had been involved in a domestic violence incident, and now they were worried because their personal address is now leaked onto the internet, and they're trying to hide from their abuser, and now all that information is public. From that standpoint, this is awful, and then from just the bad actors, the ability now to put together a bunch of stuff, and send out, like using that spreadsheet, using out an email, like saying, hey, we've got a record of your blah, 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 fill it in. It's all automated. Please click here to update and or delete, something like that. Just when you have that information that's personal, people are more likely to click on it because it's less threatening when you know something about them.
Yep. So the attack was, and that's why you kept hearing all those Russians in a unfamiliar voice from the show. This article that we're looking at over at news.com.au is simply that. There's been links to people involved with this to our evil, the Russian hacking group. And that's why Australia is kind of blaming Russia here, because all indicators point that these people are operating out of Russia. And the bigger problem, we talked about this a ton on the show this year, the interesting kind of thing, and to no surprise of mine, because we've talked about this a million times, but once lawyers get involved, lawyers figure out how to make money on everything when it comes to anything that involves business and legalities and stuff like that. And, you have lawyers now that are ramping up to sue MetaBank with class action lawsuits. And that's kind of like the thing that we've been hearing most often when larger entities and even medium-sized businesses are getting hit with cyber attacks, is lawyers are starting to circle the wagons and get people involved in class action law. If anybody knows anything, I don't know if it's like this in Australia, but in the United States, most class action lawsuits benefit the lawyers, right? Very, very rarely do the victims of particular crimes or issues involving class action lawsuits, do they benefit the actual victims. I mean, I was recently involved in a credit card fraud with a local hoagie shop in our area, very large one at that. And that's why it ended up being a class action lawsuit. And I was initially reached out to the attorneys involved and then didn't hear anything for a long time. And then like a month ago, I got a email from them saying like, oh, you qualify to be part of the class action lawsuit. All you got to do is fill this out. Go to the website and you're filling it out. And it's basically every page is me signing my rights away for any kind of future action against this particular hoagie chain. And what happened is I got to the end and it was like, you basically are entitled to up to $7.50. So if I was going to sign this, I basically was going to get a check for $7.50, where if you read through all of the information they sent you, this was a multi-million-dollar settlement. And I would imagine that by the time all the lawyers got paid, there was probably a couple $100,000 left. So, you know, as a victim, you shouldn't feel good that there's class action lawsuits happening, but as a business, you should be scared shitless of these class action lawsuits, because these lawyers, they take on these cases without getting paid up front because they know they're going to get a big payday in the end. And that's how it works in the U.S. I assume it's probably similar in Australia. So anything else you guys want to add to this about either the class action lawsuit or Russians are evil being involved with this?
I put something in the internal chat if you want to take a look at that. But basically, it talks about from when they discovered this breach, which was on October the 12th. And here we are, November the 15th. Of course, we're now talking about it in the ramifications, but basically from October the 12th all the way to November the 4th, it was just showing a timeline of how the hackers and MetaBank and their people are talking. So that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, and these hackers are releasing this information on a daily basis on a couple different dark web sites. You know, the more information they release, the idea here is the more pressure MetaBank's going to feel to cave to whatever it is that they're dealing with. Now, they just said that they were hit with a cyber incident. My guess would be that they probably had data exfiltrated and then probably dealt with ransomware at some point. I'm taking a wild guess here. It's just not data exfiltration in this case. So going back to your point there, Andre, are you kind of pointing out the fact that they've been in this mess for a month? And
so like for example, October 27, MetaBank says they can see the attack was through a VPN. Is how they got in, apparently.
Probably because they had God level access. I don't know if it was an access control issue or a vulnerability that basically gave you a skeleton key to everything. But that, I think, is one of the key things, just how much access they had when they got in.
And then on November the 5th, MetaBank refuses to pay the ransom. So this is why now we're seeing the leaks and things like that to get more attention to it.
So then we got the other ransomware event that we wanted to kind of highlight, which was this Jackson and Hillsdale County. Believe they're in Michigan, the state of Michigan. So there's probably a lot of Jackson and Hills something counties. So this one happens to be in Michigan. Municipal government, right, guys? It's not a school. Is that correct? Am I on that right?
It was the schools. It was the school.
Oh, it's the school district. Okay, yeah. So it wasn't the county. It was the Jackson County Intermediate School District.
Correct.
And a ransomware event caused an outage affecting critical operating systems. And then I guess all we have is a letter. Is that all we?
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of information in this one. So they sent out a letter yesterday. Providing an update. The outage occurred As to give the actual date, they notified law enforcement. So it looks like this is like fresh and just in development right now. I mean, the thing that I found interesting about this one in the letter that they sent was, unfortunately, more and more school districts have become victims of ransomware attacks over the past few years, and we are no exception. I agree with that statement. My question would be how did they take that information though ahead of time and take steps to protect themselves? I mean, we all know that everybody can get hit. I don't care what kind of protections you have in place. But if they knew this stuff going into it and didn't make any changes and weren't doing some of the things, that's where, that whole letter becomes a little bit disingenuous to me.
So I was recently in front of about 50 superintendents for school districts.
Mm-hmm.
And they are fully aware of the problem. Part of my talk was trying to stress that, yes, I know that you are severely underfunded with this kind of stuff, and there's really nowhere to go to kind of get this funding. And, kind of a sidebar note, like there are bills in Washington that would provide funding. My understanding is a lot of these congressmen don't have the understanding of what's inside of these bills, so they're hesitant to move forward with any of them. So that's kind of why things are stuck right now. It's not for lack of money. It's just lack of inaction because people just don't know what they're reading, because it can get very technical at times. Bigger problem is that I literally made it a point in my talk to say, like, hey, and it was rightfully pointed out by somebody, because I kept saying, you are hiring people and you're passing the buck to them. You're saying, like, hey, I have an IT guy, I have an IT director, IT person, and you're blindly putting it on them to solve your cybersecurity challenges, and you're taking no ownership of it as a superintendent, was my point. And then after that talk, one of the superintendents came up to me and was literally like, hey, I want you to meet our IT director. He's a doctorate in cybersecurity, and I'm sitting here going, oh my God, like, you're that person. You're the person who thinks I have an IT director as a doctorate in cybersecurity, and that's all I need. I don't need to worry about anything. And my point was you should have an independent person come in and do a risk assessment, regardless of how great you think your IT person is. And it remains to be seen if that's going to happen or not with any of these school districts I was in front of. Hopefully they do take some action, whether it's with us or with somebody else. But, it was amazing to me, like literally less than 5 minutes after my talk, this person was like, basically admitted to me, like, they don't care about cybersecurity. Like, you should meet with my IT person because they have a doctorate in cybersecurity and we have a very extensive cybersecurity program. And I'm like, says who? You know what I mean? Like, extensive to you, extensive to me might be two totally different things. So I think that's the kind of the world we live in right now. We know that K through 12 schools are well behind the 8 ball on this kind of stuff. And I don't think it's agnostic to this particular sector. I think most businesses, CEOs have the attitude of, I hired somebody to worry about that for me, and I'm not going to worry about it. And that's absolutely incorrect. When you get hit with ransomware, the press, the police, the FBI, they're not talking to your IT director. They're talking to the CEO and the CFO to see, what have you been doing? As Ryan pointed out, how, are you putting together a good enough program or not? That's going to determine whether you, A, have your cyber insurance claim, B, could potentially be dealing with class action lawsuits, or C, lose your job.
I think there's a good solution to that, and that would be to hire someone to do a third-party cybersecurity review on your school or your business, and then you find out, is your IT department doing what they need to do? And then if they're not, you can work with companies like all of us on the show, work with companies like ours. We can work with your IT company, and we can, or your IT provider. I know the school district in our town has a whole team, and, they do like things like fix printers and, network connectivity and stuff. They can bring in a company like ours to handle the cybersecurity part of it to make sure, because the bottom line, we know this it's true of all data, but schools especially are really, really it's really, really valuable data, because they can take a social security number of a kid and basically start using that for scamming out in the world. And it'll be a while before anybody notices, because 8-year-olds aren't going out and trying to get mortgages and stuff like that. There may not even be anybody that ever knows for years. And then plus the collaboration of that data, like we talked about in the last episode, if you know a kid's name, you can send an email to a parent and say, hey, can you believe this just happened? Or, hey, there's an issue with your kid, click here so we can fix it, or whatever, and get people to click on ransomware. I mean, so these schools they're all bad, but schools especially are rough. So
Rye, I just want to kind of ask you a question, because this is pretty widespread, and I'm familiar with kind of how things work around here in the New Jersey and Pennsylvania area. And I'm pretty confident when I say this, that just the amount of schools that are affected by this, because it happened at a certain level, I guess the county level, we're just not structured like that around here. So I'm trying to get maybe your insight on what could be happening here. Because you're not, our school districts are very segregated, and there's multiple school districts obviously within the county, like you see here. But I live in Burlington County, and that's where we're at in New Jersey. If Burlington County was hit, it wouldn't affect all these schools like this. So any insight on why so many schools were affected and kind of in one foul swoop by hitting these two counties?
I mean, I believe that this district, and I don't know the size of it, but I mean, that area has a lot of lower income type areas associated with it. So if I were to guess, it would be a funding issue where they had to build out the school district to be larger in order to capitalize on their funding.
Is it more rural?
No, I mean, Jackson's probably a medium-sized city within Michigan, but then you're talking about Jackson County, and so you're expanding out. But
got it. Okay, it's just amazing to me, how many schools were taken offline because of, and we're not talking the list I'm looking at is not one school. Every school in that district is whacked from this county problem, which is wow, who looked at that and said, this is a good idea?
I mean, I will say, based on the letter, and the letter is obviously made to look better for them, it looks like they responded quickly compared to some of the other responses that we've seen. But that's kind of my question.
They responded by closing the schools.
No, just the internet, and you can't use any devices.
Yeah. But they brought in outside experts instead of piddling around trying to figure it out themselves. So, I mean, there's that. But I mean, there's not a whole lot of information to make a
Well, I know in my kids' school they don't have chalkboards anymore, and if they can't put that smartboard on the internet, there's not a whole lot of learning going on.
Right.
And books. Yep. One thing what Randy was saying regarding having that outside company. But even one of our clients, and they're about 40 at the time, there were about 40 users, and we thought of that, and we tried to get them to do that, and the cost was almost about $20,000. And from there, they just nope, we'll just take the chance. We trust you, Arc Solvers, and we'll just just do what you can do. But they didn't even want to pay that. And then once they get the information, then there could be possibly more work, more project work, and now they can't say they don't know. So unfortunately, I think a lot of these companies just rather just hope and see if that's a solution, but it's not, I
think I got too many tabs open and my computer's starting to yell at me. So I want to jump into our other ransomware topic or victim is this another international outside of the US, but just north of us in Canada. And it's a pretty big food retail giant called Sobeys. And they are experiencing an IT systems issue since last weekend. So Sobeys is one of two national grocery retailers in Canada with 134,000 employees, servicing a network of 1,500 stores in all 10 provinces under multiple retail banners, including Sobeys, Safeway, IGA, Foodland, Fresh Company, Thrifty Foods, and Lawton Drugs. So they are not shutting the grocery stores, but it's saying, some services are impacted by this company-wide IT issues. What do you guys know about this? I think Black Bast is behind it. What else do we know?
I like some of the pictures that they posted in the story. So you're basically walking down the grocery aisle to check out, and they've got the little screen for the register showing the ransomware message, which is pretty interesting.
Disturbing and interesting at the same time. I mean, bottom line, this is just classic ransomware where the computers are they're ransomed. That means the computer's encrypted, and they're asking for a certain amount of money to get the money back. To decrypt them, basically, to release their data to them. And there's probably a threat in there somewhere about it being released if you don't pay. I don't see that on the screen there.
I don't see a confirmation in this case, but they do talk about this particular ransomware being known to do that.
It does say your data will be published on Tor website if you do not pay the ransom. So it's both encrypted and exfiltrated and extorted at this point. The old
always good to let your customers read that message for you. That saves y'all the PR that you need to send out.
Yeah, someone turn off the monitor, right?
I would put a piece of paper over the monitor or something, man.
I mean, they got the piece of paper above it saying "Please do not use," but
or nothing to see here,
right?
Yeah, also.
So I'm sure Black Bast is asking for probably a couple million, definitely in the millions from this company because they're so large, and they know that they have a ton of leverage right now to get these systems back up and running. We see this all the time where companies try to limp along. They think, oh, we can handle this, we can deal with this, and we're just learning more and more after these events. That it's like I was looking at statistics the other day. It's like nearly impossible for a company to stay in business after a ransomware attack. And I don't think that people understand that and don't get the gravity of what I just said.
Mm-hmm.
So many companies go out of business after a ransomware attack. It's got to be in the 80 or 90%, right?
It's like 80% after 6 months are out of business.
So, I mean, I wish I could tell everyone this before they get hit with ransomware, but unfortunately, people ignore it. People choose or decide that they have other priorities in their business and can't spend money on cybersecurity. And then they end up hit with ransomware, and they try to limp along for months and months, to die a slow death. And we see it all the time.
You said something interesting to me that they think that they can get past this on their own and fix this on their own. I think the same can also be said that we're seeing, when they involve an IT company, that an IT company who's not specializing in responding to these types of things are thinking that they can go in and just, clean it up and not be a big deal. And either one, they're not successful in doing so. Two, they get them back up and running, but they fail to grab any of the forensics and stuff that the insurance companies are now asking for. So it's just, you got to make sure you talk to the experts in these types of things. One, to make sure you're protected in the first place, and two, to respond to it if you get hit.
And that's the biggest thing. You got to go back to with people and understand, the biggest thing, the number one thing you can do right now. And I just know, we talk to a lot of companies, we and we talk to businesses, and I don't know what people think they're doing for risk assessments, but more than likely, whatever you think you've done around a risk assessment is probably not good enough. And that either that or you're just lying and you say you've had a risk assessment done and you haven't. But it all starts with having somebody come in and do a risk assessment to see where you are at with your cybersecurity practices, and then you build from there. And that's the biggest thing that I think a lot of these companies that are dealing with these attacks, the three that we mentioned today, probably lacked, or they just didn't get a good enough, assessment of their risk. So you guys agree with that? Do you guys, have anything to add or above and beyond just start with a risk assessment? Like if somebody's listening to this and they're going, well, how do I don't want to become one of these companies
right?
That they just highlighted. Where does it start? To me, it doesn't start anywhere else but hiring somebody to come in and tell you where you're at.
Because that's the basis for the decisions you're going to make moving forward. You need to know that information before you can decide who you need to engage and what you need to do. I mean, and then going back to just making sure you're finding the right expert for the solution. I mean, just to use a health analogy, like if you had cancer, are you going to go to your pharmacist to take care of it, or are you going to go to an oncologist that specializes in that type of thing?
Yeah,
they both have they both have medical knowledge, but one specialized to fix the exact problem that you have.
Mm-hmm. Or some cases it might be a difference between, are you going to go to an oncologist or a veterinarian? The veterinarian's trained in medicine as well. It could probably do a lot of stuff a regular doctor does, but I'm not going to go to a veterinarian for oncology. Didn't mean to stop the show with that comment.
Man, you were just so powerful with that you froze Brian up. Oh, wait, he blinked. He's in and out.
I'm having technical issues.
While he's getting unfrozen, earlier when we were talking about Australia, I saw that they're actually considering to outlaw ransomware payments.
Mm-hmm.
So that would change this whole game. I wonder how, but I know it would change the whole game. I've heard that like France won't pay ransomware to actual kidnap victims, or not ransomware, but won't pay the ransom for kidnappings.
Yeah.
And I've heard that like they almost never get kidnapped when they travel internationally because all the bad guys know that, they don't get money from them.
It's the same philosophy as not negotiating with terrorists, right? If we're giving them what they want, it just keeps feeding, the engine and they keep going. So yeah, if we were able to find a way to stop those payments, then what do they do? That all that funding goes out the door overnight. But finding a way of doing it is a whole nother ballgame.
It's interesting. I mean, it's one of those situations where businesses are going to decide for themselves. And if you want to make a ransomware payment, you're going to make it. You can there's other ways you can get it done.
You just get even more stealthy about it.
Yeah. Hey, you hired me to do software development project for you, and you're paying that, right? And that goes to like everybody blaming Bitcoin and, as that being a catalyst for why ransomware is where it's at today. Ain't nothing stopping you from writing a check to somebody else somewhere else without using Bitcoin. You can wire money. You can ACH money to people using different venues. If they have a payment way processor set up, a way to pay them, you don't have to use Bitcoin. You can use American dollars.
Plus, it doesn't stop everything. I think, something like that, we're already seeing a huge increase in business email compromise scams. So that still, is on the game board, right? Because they're just taking that money from people, transmitting it to a legitimate entity and just changing the number so it goes to them. So, something like that isn't going to stop those types of things from happening.
If anybody out there gets ransomware and they send you ACH information, dude, just take money from them. Don't give money to them.
So I'm going to move on, guys. Good job.
It's probably illegal. That was a joke.
On the ransomware stuff. We want to talk about kind of a scenario where we're looking at this article from Bleeping Computer with 42,000 sites used to trap users in brand impersonation scheme. And this is something interesting on a lot of different levels for me, because I'm impressed with the recent pivot of these guys and how quickly they're able to create these sites, these malicious sites, for the purpose of basically just not being caught. Is really why they're doing it, and doing it the way that they're doing it. So bottom line is a malicious for-profit group named Fang Zhao has created a massive network of over 42,000 web domains that impersonate well-known brands to redirect users to sites promoting adware apps, dating sites, or free giveaways. So without reading too much into it, I'm assuming that they're just taking things like popular stores like Target, Walmart, and they're just changing one or two letters, hoping somebody messes a keystroke up and ends up at this site that, basically, sends you somewhere where bad things can happen. And let's talk about kind of those bad things. One of them simply is they're getting traffic right to their sites to just run ads and sell ads and push adware, right? Which is a market. There is a market for people pushing adware to people, and the more installations that they get, say for every 1,000 computers that the adware gets on, they get a certain dollar amount paid to them. That's part of what's going on here. The other part is just getting you to go into this site, think that you won something, think that you, are dealing with maybe a transaction that you may have bought something at Target, and they're saying, hey, go to this website and fill out this survey about our product. But really it's just good timing, right? On the part of the cyber criminal, that you just bought something for Target and now you got a Target email saying, go rate this product. And you go to this website and you think that you're dealing with Target when you're really giving information to a cyber criminal, or they're potentially putting some bad stuff on your computer because you're clicking on things and you're allowing things to happen on the computer because you trust this. You think it's legit, right? And these are all built on trust. So anything else you guys pulled out of this that I kind of missed or you're seeing?
Several things. One, it mentions that they're using Cloudflare.
Yeah, they always use Cloudflare. They always use Cloudflare.
Do what?
They always use Cloudflare.
Right. And the thing with that is to do anything out of a normal web server, you have to open up the ports to Cloudflare, or else a lot of sites on your web server won't work because they're in Cloudflare. If they're in Cloudflare, they need those ports. So hiding behind Cloudflare is it's like kind of a two-edged sword, if you will. And Cloudflare is a good service for a lot of things, but its downfall is really that, anybody can be on it. So that's one thing. It says also they're registering several hundred new sites a day. Their little flow chart on how they're getting to people and how they're getting into their data, getting them to download things and get apps on their computer is pretty fascinating as well. And apparently these guys are making tons of money doing this. Did we freeze up?
It's amazing. Right? I don't think. No, I. It's amazing. I don't think people realize like how you can make money from this, right? But it all stems from tricking people through email, right? So this is just a massive phishing campaign, but it's wildly successful, and they're able to make money because people are clicking on it. Mm-hmm. Right. So that lends it to how well, or I don't want to say how well security awareness training is working, because you got to be doing it in the first place. Right. So, but that's how you become smart on this stuff. Right. This is like, there is no technology that's going to prevent these phishing emails from getting in your inbox, from your content filters, from determining whether the site the link you're clicking on in the email is going to a bad place or good place, because these domains were just registered. These sites were just stood up. They have no reputation. So when they have no reputation, you have two choices as a system administrator, from my standpoint, right? You can say, if it has no reputation, allow it, or you can say, if it has no reputation, block it. I can tell you at my home, I'm not blocking that, but in my office, we're absolutely blocking anything we don't know about. Yes, it's freaking annoying, and we have to put in unblock requests all the time to our team, but this is exactly why we block things that are not known or not categorized. If we don't know it, it's not showing up in your web browser. If it's a brand new website, our mutual friend, Chris Weiser, he changes his domain all the time. And I'm constantly dealing with that with him. He's sending me links and I'm clicking on it and I can't get to the stuff because he's using all these shortened URLs and stuff now. Then that it's legitimate business stuff, but my system doesn't know what that new URL is. So my system's like, we're not allowing this to load on your system. And that's that's zero trust. That's what that is. We have our content filtering set up in a way where it's basically set up as zero trust. If we can't go and look in a database and say, is this website business? Is this website, illegal or whatever? And it'll tell us yes, no. And if it's bad, it'll be blocked. If it's good, it won't be blocked. But if it's unknown at our office, it's going to be blocked. Now, am I doing that at my house? No, my wife would kill me, but you should know I don't work from my house. I only play PlayStation from my house.
I mean, there should also be we lost Ryan. There should also be basically, if a domain is less than a certain number of months or maybe a year, I'm not sure, but having something in there, like if it's a brand new domain, just block it by default. I mean, these guys are creating 300 sites a day.
Right. And that's the point. Like most
noticed.
Yeah, most people don't think that way. What I just laid out for everybody is that it's not great when, like I said, when I get an email from Weiser and his domain, he's using this new marketing thing, and his domain is sent to me and I can't get to it. Right, I can't see it and it's blocked for me. And it's annoying because then I have to go through this process with my team to have it evaluated. But that's why you have to have this stuff, right? Because if these guys are setting up these domains and they're hours old and then they're sending phishing emails and your team clicks on it, you're not providing security awareness training, or that your employees just aren't paying attention to it. It's not a very good, robust program. They don't know how to spot a fish. That's going to be a problem for you if you don't have some kind of content filtering that's, like Randy laid out, very much based around zero trust. If we don't know about it, we're not allowing it to happen. So I don't know where Rye went. I don't think he had to leave yet, but
no, he had a blue screen.
Oh boy.
Help him with that. Yeah, I just read about one of those today. So
moving right along, we're about 44 minutes in. We do have a comment from a viewer. I don't know who this guy is. You guys might. Vladin doesn't really have a question, more of a statement. It's an interesting statement to me, so I figured I'd share it with you. Yeah. His position is that young people need to lead government so they can understand technology better. I mean, look, if you're looking through the lens of like somebody who's looking at like somebody like a Biden or a Trump who are well into their 80s and didn't grow up with this stuff, I agree with you, but there are enough people under the age of 50 that don't understand technology where I couldn't agree with that statement very much. Not everybody out there is like Randy, Ryan, and Andre and myself, where we understand this stuff. there's a lot of people at a very young age who need guys like us to help them understand this stuff because they're experts at what they do, trading stocks or, being an Instagram influencer. I don't know, but that's kind of my thought process and my opinion on this.
I kind of agree with Vlad on this one maybe more from a young-minded people. I mean, like when we saw Chris Krebs a few months ago, he left 2-3 years ago. He used to be the head of CISA.
He didn't leave. He was fired by Trump.
Yeah. So he left 4 or 5 years ago. He said he still gets calls all the time. Like they'll pass some law, and one of the first people they call is him. Like, hey, can you explain this law to us? So I don't know if it's young people or like-minded people or a little bit of both, but
certain people
need to be leading the government on this and
I'll take it a step further. I'm not going to say young people. I'm going to say, and I'm not. This is not my original thought. Chris said this at the event we were all at together. Cybersecurity professionals who understand this need to get involved and lead government. 100%. You don't have to run for office, but like what Chris said, get involved, get to know your congresspeople and your senators and develop a channel of communication with them. So if they have a question about cybersecurity, they have you as a resource that they can reach out to for that expert advice. That's a great way to serve your country. Just reach out to your local congressmen and senators and say, hey, I'm a cybersecurity expert. I live in your district. I voted for you, whatever. I support you. And I'm here as a resource for you to, help you drive legislation forward that involves cybersecurity. And I kind of mentioned it at the top of the show. Like, a lot of this stuff gets stuck in Washington simply because they don't understand what they're reading.
And I agree with that 100%. I think, to add on to that, I think that the people making these laws and drafting these laws need to do the same thing that we need a lot of more business owners to do, is to realize when they need to ask questions. Too many just assume that, that's, I understand that, we just, this, that. They don't ask the experts. They don't ask for information. They're making these decisions based on, nothing or things that they pulled out of thin air or something, their buddy told them without asking the right questions. So I think that's just as important.
Yeah. Even prior to our podcast today, I actually went to go visit my local councilwoman, and we were, talking about things happening in my community, and she was asking questions. So likewise, Brian, you don't need to join the government or anything like that, but the government needs to be able to listen, not be politically motivated by people paying them out on the side or whatever, and just want to do what's best for the country. But unfortunately, we haven't seen that in a long time.
I like how you put paying them on the side and politically motivated all together as like that's the thing.
Lobbyist. I mean, it kind of is.
I know it is. just so nonchalantly. But man, I hope that you're totally right. It shouldn't be politically motivated, and it shouldn't be that some big companies giving them money, and that's only who they should listen to. So,
so I got this article up from MSN that you shared, Randy. I think it was you, right? The last one in the sheet. Interesting to me that the title reads, "Insurance company refuses to pay ransom, so hackers start releasing health records of up to 10 million people," which is what we were talking about with the Metabank in Australia.
Yep.
And then I'm reading the article, and it says nothing about the insurance company refusing to pay. It's just saying like the healthcare provider believes that all this data is going to get released, and more data is going to get released because, it doesn't say insurance company. It says Metabank refused to pay the demand ransom.
Mm-hmm. And we had a story not too long ago about that too, where the insurance company was suing the insured because they chose not to pay.
Right.
Amongst other reasons, but
that's just a little interesting tidbit of information there. Like, is this like they have some insight and they're about to go live with this article, or are they just like, what is this? Like, why did they put this out here? Did they refuse to pay? Did we see that when we were talking about it earlier?
No.
Yeah, no. That timeline did show that they refused to pay.
Okay. Well, there we go. We've revisited Australia twice during.
But it paints a good picture of the current landscape of where things are at from the standpoint of ransomware and paying. And we just did a tabletop exercise with a company. And I really like doing the tabletop exercises now with companies as we take them through a ransomware scenario. And we've been doing that a lot this year because it gives them perspective on things like, hey, you have cyber insurance. Guess what? We're your MSP. We can't do anything right now for the next 2 or 3 days until your insurance company shows up on site and gives us the green light to go. And it could be longer than 3 days. And then their mind, if you don't tell them that, they're thinking like as soon as they get ransomware, they're calling you and you're jumping on it and getting rid of it like it's fighting a fire. Right. And that's the things that people need to understand when they have these relationships. I guess, I don't know, you guys can talk about this if you want. But like this year and maybe last year, we really started to help companies understand like what their actual situation was. And I think before that, a lot of our clients in particular, just thought that like, yeah, I have cyber insurance. Yeah, I have somebody who's taking care of my security and my IT. And none of those things were like talking to one another, right? Cyber insurance was over here. They bought the policy from their buddy. IT guys over here. And the only time, and we're stressing to clients that you need to come together now in this planning process, like tabletop exercise version 3.0. Now we need to start bringing partners into the conversation. Yes, we ran through your policies and procedures and how this would happen and how it would affect this and that. But now we're starting to take it to another level where we're bringing in these outside entities to work together at one time. And that's what it needs to look like. You don't want to have the ransomware event be the first time that your IT company talks to your insurance people or is even seeing your cyber insurance policy for the first time. Like, oh, like you only have $1 million in coverage and you're a $20 million a year company. Well, that's not going to get us very far. Right.
What if you kind of walked through like in 30 seconds? I know we're near the end of the show, but could you walk through real quick, like who you get in that room when you do that? Do you do any real stuff in your tabletop, or is it all just there in the conference room on the table, if you will? Like, I think a lot of people may not have heard of that before.
Yeah, that's why it's called a tabletop. You never want to an environment in my, you need to have other environments where you can do simulated pen tests. You don't want to take down, especially if there's a vulnerability present or some easy way to wreck something because it was just poorly constructed in the first place, like software development programs and maybe poorly put together networks, things like that. I am not a believer in actually doing a pen test or any kind of exercise on the actual environment, like, pretending you got ransomware and doing that on the actual environment. So what we do is we walk the executives through the scenario. We might throw different variables at them through the process. Like, okay, we might say, okay, this is now caught the attention of the FBI, and the FBI now needs to come in and also work with your cyber, which is not out of the realm of question that the FBI gets involved. It's actually very common. So introducing all these things to make the senior executives think. I guess the biggest thing I can give you based on the question you asked me, and because we're short on time, everybody needs to be involved who's going to be potentially making a decision in the process of whether you're going to pay the ransom, how much you're going to pay. So we always ask the question, like, to the CEO, do you have to run this by a board or anything like that? And if the answer is yes, then we need to bring the board into the tabletop exercise. If there's outside partners that deal with IT, like we have a client who has custom software development done, and they have database administrators that they hire a third-party company to do. We told them like they have to be involved in this because we can bring the systems back up so far. They're going to need to bring them back up, once we get it to a certain point, and they're going to have to be involved, and they should have a say in what things look like and what have you. So I would say every single scenario is unique. And that's why you need to have a trained person who knows how to do tabletops and incident response, go through this stuff with you so they can paint a real world scenario. And I recommend you do these things more than once a year, at least twice a year. If you can do them quarterly, because you can't improve it enough. And as you go through it each time, you will take notes, you will discover things that just don't fit the business, don't make sense, and you got to tweak, your process.
And I know we only have 1 minute left, but even on the operations side as well, how is payroll going to be made? How is accounting going to write checks? Can they write checks? How are they going to enter the building, because everything is connected to the internet, but then you have to unplug it. So there's so much other things too. And maybe we can do a show specifically on that as well.
We could do a whole tabletop scenario, 100% on like how to properly do a tabletop exercise and what it looks like for businesses. Cause I think that's a big thing that companies don't do it enough, and they probably don't do it right. A lot of it's a box checking exercise these days, in my opinion. But I know every single insurance policy is asking about it now. When's the last time you did any kind of incident response planning or tabletop exercise? Tabletop exercise is part of incident response planning, business continuity planning. Mm-hmm. So if you hear those words or see those words in your policy or when you filled out the application, that's a tabletop exercise. So, all right, guys.
All right.
7 minutes in again. Great job, Ryan. I'm glad you came back. Didn't offend you.
Technical difficulties.
I feel you. All right, guys. See you next week. Have a good one.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.